Welcome to the Peterson's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, Associate Editor Mark Demko.
So hey everybody, welcome to the Bowhunting Podcast presented by Lancaster Archery Supply. We have an incredible guest today, and before I introduce her, I've got to tell you, we do a lot of product reviews. We talk a lot of great innovations in the world of archery and archery hunting here on the podcast. But one of the things that has always seemed a bit daunting to me, and I know there are people that do it incredibly well, is trying to film your own hunts. When we make product videos and stuff here for Peterson's Bowhunting, we either tag team the filming or we'll have a professional videographer film. But Caitlin Moss, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Now, Caitlin is known for all the self-filming she does, and you have, I think, 80,000 followers on your YouTube page and 67 or 70,000 followers on Instagram. So you have a really dedicated audience, and you've done some incredible storytelling through your platforms. And as I mentioned, I'm super excited to have you on because I just have never known how to take that next step. I think it's hard enough to harvest an animal. When you want to try and film it too, it's got to be an incredible challenge, at least when you start out.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, I'm very organic and open about how my hunts go. So I show the good, the bad, the ugly. And there's a lot of animals that have been able to survive because of the camera. So it's definitely just something that's part of it. But I don't know, I've just always really enjoyed that aspect, and I enjoy taking people along, and obviously people enjoy following. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I notice as you watch the videos. You are the emotion comes through, the authenticity, and that's one of the things that makes self-filming, at least from your perspective, so interesting rather than having a polished video at the end. It's incredible. Now, I think we're going to talk a little bit about how you got started with hunting, but I did want you to touch on you took an incredible buck last year and you were able to self-film that. Swoops, can you talk about that? Because that's a magnificent deer. I think that scored 160, 170 class.
Yeah, he scored 167 and 7/8, I believe. Really, really cool. The whole thing was really cool, actually. That is the first deer that I've ever truly focused on hunting, just one deer. So to be able to harvest them was really awesome. It's one of those things where I was like, okay, I got to be careful with how I go about this. I got to time my time in the woods appropriately, and I don't want to blow it. So I really honestly only ever hunted him 3 days, I believe, and then I harvested him the next day. So luckily it all worked out, but really, really cool. I had 2 years of history with him, and the first year I didn't hunt him properly. I don't know, I just didn't do it. And I'm like, okay, maybe next year I can hone in on him. So I was able to kind of just keep an eye from a distance on cameras and, just trying to play the cards right. And luckily it worked out. So really, really cool deer. And I was very emotional when it all came together because I just could not believe it.
Yes, well, congratulations. That is for most hunters, that's a once in a lifetime buck. So tremendous job on that.
Thank you.
Did you put any extra pressure on yourself, knowing that you also wanted to try and get the deer on camera, get the hunting sequence on camera? Did you find that it was more difficult than some of the other things you filmed?
Say so. And I think it's just simply because I have been filming for so long that, it's just kind of second nature to have the camera with me. And I guess earlier in my career, I did put some more pressure on myself because I obviously wanted it to all come together on camera. But I kind of have learned that you just have to let everything unfold how it's going to unfold. And if you get it on film, cool. If you don't, then it wasn't meant to be. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather have, that buck on my wall versus just having a little video clip of him. So I kind of just try to film it the best I can. And it's definitely not polished by any means. I mean, I'm not some commercial filmmaker, but I have fun with it, and I try not to put the pressure on myself because that ends up screwing me in the end if I do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that sentiment because we talk all the time about like taking good quality photographs. You know, when you get an animal, and
Sure.
if you want to get it mounted, they're $1,000 now to get a deer head mounted, for example,
Yeah.
depending where you go. But if you can get something like the videos you're taking, or get some good quality photographs with your trophy, that's an incredible memory. And it it
Mhm.
doesn't cost a lot less. Now, in your case, you have to invest in some equipment and stuff like that. But before we get into that, let's take a step back. How did you get start hunting, and then what was that transition to bow hunting like?
Well, so my dad is just an avid deer hunter. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so like the rifle season there is basically a holiday. We used to have the first day off of school. So that was just, something I've always grown up doing. And, I just went out with my dad as long as I can remember. So I just have always done it. And I really didn't know anyone who bow hunted when I was young. And so crossbows, I think, were legal when I was maybe 12 or 13. So my dad bought me a crossbow because, I mean, he didn't know anything about archery. So he was like, oh, this is a good way to maybe transition into it. So I had a crossbow, and him and I kind of just went out and started to learn like how to actually archery hunt together, which was really cool. You learn things about deer that you don't know when you're just rifle hunting. So um, it was just one of those things that was like cool to kind of do together. And as far as like filming it, um, my dad and I just always like watched hunting shows, and he was like, oh, it'd be cool to just like film for memories. And so we just had this little, it honestly looked like a cell phone. I don't quite remember what it was, like a little Kodak, like point and shoot kind of thing. And so him and I would just like film random things. And I don't think we ever actually filmed like a full hunt, but it was just one of those things like it was cool to have, and kind of just taught me to always have the camera, around. So I kind of got used to it. And then obviously, through the years I've upgraded and, kind of learned to be a little bit better at it. So that was the journey.
No, and that's wonderful. And you made me think. I live in Pennsylvania. So, what part of the state are you from
Okay.
originally?
Like South Central, like Harrisburg area.
Yeah, and I live in the Allentown area. So, at one
Okay,
time we were
yeah.
fairly close. But you grew up and you were hunting in Pennsylvania. Did you start hunting on public land in Pennsylvania? Because that's pretty pressured.
Yes. Yes, and I'm like now I'm very appreciative of it because it really taught me how to hunt, and now hunting's never easy, but it's taught me some things that it's like, okay, it's definitely different um anywhere else. So I appreciate the struggle that I had to kind of go through as a kid, but I have a cousin who's a farmer, so we had some private land access, but he was a hunter, so it wasn't a lot of like, I wasn't getting on big deer consistently by any means. So public land is just that's where it was at.
Yeah, and you talked about starting. You were doing some basic filming in the early days, and you've continued to upgrade your equipment. But um, what were the first considerations for you when you wanted to get a good camera set up? And let's look at this as a one-on-one kind of perspective. If somebody wants to get into self-filming, what would be your recommendations as far as the base equipment to get started?
Well, I mean, when I started versus what's out there now is definitely different. I mean, somebody trying to get into it now, honest to God, you can literally use your cell phone if you really can't like afford to go out and buy a camera or a full setup. I mean, the quality these days is just amazing. So, there's something as simple as getting like a stabilizer mount for your bow and then just putting your cell phone on there. Or like a GoPro, I think is definitely something that some people could do. Um, I personally like the handy cams, and I think that's just very budget depending. Whatever your budget is, there's something there for you. I think I used to have a Sony AX53, I think is what it was for a long time, and I really loved it. Just for the convenience factor of like it was just ready to go. You just point and shoot kind of thing. And the quality was still pretty good. So I would say any handy cam is a good starter camera. And I mean, if you're looking to get into like photography and filming side, DSLRs are the way to go. And I really don't think people need to go and spend a lot of money. It's really something that's like, you know, yeah, that's great, but at the end of the day, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get into it. Buy something that's affordable, learn how to use it, learn how to get good with it, and then upgrade.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And the other thing is you do a bit of saddle hunting, and I wanted to know how you've had to adapt
Yeah,
your self filming, because obviously there's a bunch of things that's sort of a loaded question. You've obviously got to pack as light as possible, and you're carrying
sure.
extra equipment in. So maybe let's start there. As you started to saddle hunt, how did you adapt your self filming process?
Well, to be honest, I'm still adapting it because it's just one of those things that you're just like, okay, you go through one season, you're like, okay, what can I do to be lighter next year? And to be honest, my camera gear probably is most of my weight. So it's been interesting trying to cut back, but still have enough to, you know, at least be efficient with it. So I have a friend actually who kind of created a camera arm that is like super lightweight. It's called the Reach. And I think that's probably the most beneficial thing that I have added to my setup is it's just this very compact arm, but it's still very solid, super lightweight. I think it's only like 2 or 3 pounds. So that in itself, like if you can get a really good but yet lightweight camera arm, that's definitely something that's very important. And really from like transitioning from a tree stand to a saddle, there really wasn't a ton of like changes that I had to make. You're always trying to improve regardless of how you're hunting. So there wasn't a lot that I had to do. It's different just because of the way you're facing the tree versus facing away, but I personally don't really mind it. And if you're going to have somebody go hunting with you, I think the saddle is absolutely the way to go for a cameraman because they can be right over where they're facing you. If there's no like awkward turning around. So there's pros and cons with everything, but I really haven't had any issues with it.
Yeah, thank you. And I obviously, yeah, it's great that you talked about the arm, because the weight is so important, keeping that weight down. And people think all the time about platforms and sticks and things like that, but you have to take so much else in the wood when you go. You got a hammer, you have
Yeah,
an arm, you have so many other things you've got to remember to take along, and that can add up pretty
right.
quickly. Now, you do a lot of filming by yourself. Do you also like have people go in and film with you? Is that something that you try to do too? And like I've seen some great videos that you've done where you've had so many multiple angles. I'm wondering if you're running a couple cameras at a time or things like that.
Yeah. So, yes, I do a little bit of both. I definitely mostly self film, but sometimes it's nice to have somebody, especially if I'm working on projects for like sponsors. It's nice to just have that other person to get the shots that I can't quite get. Mostly of me. Like I can film everything else, but like if I need shots of me, it's definitely easier to have somebody. So I do occasionally have people come out. And my current setup, I have a Sony A6300, and then I've got a GoPro Hero 11. I actually just got that, and then a little like vlogging Canon. I think it's called a G7X. So it's like a vlog camera, which is good for if you have to do like an interview or it can be a good second angle. But I try to run as many angles as I can that make sense just to get everything. It is hard to get everything when you're just by yourself.
Yeah, no, and totally understand that, and I think having those options really helps to enhance the video. But the other thing we talk about is audio. Do you do anything special as far as audio? Obviously, if you're close to the camera or whatever, that's not a bigger issue. But you're out in nature, in the environment, you got a lot of background noise from different things, and also you have you know some subtle sounds and things like that. Do you do anything to enhance your audio setup at this point?
That is one thing that I am still semi struggling with and working on. I just have a shotgun mic on my main camera, and then I've got the wireless, the Rode, I think they're called Rode Go 2 or something, wireless mics that I'll use in certain situations. But a lot of times, like that type of like less is better, honestly. So if I have to turn on 3 different cameras, 3 different microphones, it can just kind of be a lot. So sometimes I sacrifice audio. It sucks in the long run, but like sometimes I just have to. So I am kind of actually still playing around with that. But for the most part, I really don't have anything crazy that I use.
Now, if somebody is listening to this, or if somebody's been thinking about it, such as myself, about starting to self film, what are the main considerations you would tell them to think about when they, like you said, you could start with a really good smartphone, cell camera. But what's a good thing to begin with as far as what you need to consider if you want to start filming your own hunts? What's your advice?
So I think let's say there's a deer coming in, and you're not quite sure where he's going to stop, where your shooting lane's going to be. Everybody wants these like close, zoomed in shots, which obviously they look cool, but you might not get it on film. So I would say the best advice that I can give is just make sure you're focused in a general area. Don't be too focused on a certain spot, and kind of have your lens like shot wide. That way you can still get it on video and then polish it up in post production when you're editing. You can cut, crop it in or whatever, to get that look that you need. But just, best advice is just make sure you're on the animal, because that there's so many times where they just step out of frame or whatever, and it gets messy then.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And obviously, the other thing, sort of like when you start to take pictures, you have to temper your expectations. Your first couple things you film are probably not going to be masterpieces, but you're going to learn and
Sure.
grow from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, I do all my own editing too, and I'm by no means am I the best editor, but editing has actually made my filming better because, when you sit down and you start, piecing things together, you're like, oh, I should have filmed a little more B-roll, or I should have filmed this, or, and you kind of like learn your style first of all, and then also, what you're missing. So it's cool for me at least to kind of go through the whole process because I'm like, okay, what can I do better next time, or what can I improve on? So that aspect I really enjoy because I think it just makes me better overall.
It's an interesting point that you brought up, and I was going to ask you, and maybe you know, and maybe you don't, but talked about editing your own work. What's the first aha moment you had when you were editing where you said, oh, this is something I need to start incorporating into my filming, or oh, I wish I would have gotten this. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is like everybody's so focused on getting the kill shot, that one shot, which obviously that's what everybody wants to see. So that is important. But if you're gonna actually try to make a whole film out of it, you need B-roll. So like if you think you have enough B-roll, film more. Like it's the second you think you have enough, just film a little bit more. You can never have too much, but there's definitely times where you don't have enough and you're like, just I needed that one thing, I even if it's a leaf blowing in the breeze, like it just kind of gives you that time, and it adds to your video. So everybody wants that kill shot, but if you can just keep adding B-roll and if you can just tell a story, I mean, I personally don't think it matters how long your video is. I think the quality is better than just like a long video. So if you can tell a really good story in a short amount of time, I think that's better than, just a kill shot. Everybody can do that, but if you can tell a story, that makes a good video.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you brought up there because we talk all the time internally. Some videos, you can capture everything in 90 seconds, 2 minutes, depending what you're doing, and some of the longer form is
Yeah.
better. But as you mentioned, it's as much about the storytelling as it is about the harvest at the
Mhm.
end. And so I think that's a great point because there is an artistic element that goes into it, and every person has his or own flair and how they want to approach it and things like that. And creativity is a huge component, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So now I should ask you, what's your current bow setup? So you do a lot of archery hunting. You do a lot of deer hunting, a lot
Mhm.
of turkey hunting. What are you using right now? What's your current bow, your arrow, your broadheads that you like to use?
I have a Matthews Prima, and it's set to I think 47 pounds, 48, something like that. My draw length is 25, and my current arrows are the Easton Axis SPTs. I've been using those for 2 years now, I believe, and I really like them. They're pretty good. And broadheads, I kind of mess around. I tend to like a four blade, just simply because it makes a hole and it's not going to seal itself. So even if you have a less than ideal shot, you're still looking pretty good with those. So I kind of mess around. I've used interlock, I've used Muzzy, I've used um, I guess this past year, it's a newer brand called Rec. I'm actually friends with the guy who created those, so I was like, just like, yeah, I'll help you out. Use them for this year and let you know what I think. So they've been pretty good to me. So yeah, that's the setup.
we're talking about the bows. I want to take a quick little break here and mention that, we're presented by Lancaster Archery. For all your bow hunting needs, visit lancasterarchery.com. We've got the gear, we've got the knowledge, we've got the passion. Thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to mention, we talked about growing up in Pennsylvania. Now you live in the Midwest, and you're in some prime whitetail areas out there, but you have done a tremendous amount of public land hunting over your career. Talk a little bit about that. And as you're talking about that, do you have a state or a part of a state that you love to hunt more than any place else?
Well, yeah. So the reason I moved to the Midwest, I went to college in Missouri.
Uh-huh.
And so obviously I grew up hunting public a little bit, but I didn't know anybody when I moved and I didn't have access to anybody's property. And, I'm a broke college kid. I'm not about to pay to go on hunts. So I literally just started using like Onyx, actually conveniently at the time was when they were kind of coming out. So I found Onyx and I started just looking for public land and bouncing around till I found one that was pretty good and not a lot of pressure on it. So um, I do have a little honey hole that I'd like to go back to every year, but I don't necessarily have like a favorite state. I guess I really like just anywhere in the Midwest. It's just I don't know. I've always have like really good luck. I have good hunts, and so Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, obviously is really cool. And I do like going back to Pennsylvania just for the memories and just the home feeling. I go and I hunt with my dad every year in the late season just to do that. So I don't necessarily have a favorite, but I like doing it. And I don't know. Public land is just kind of second nature to me. I mean, it's certainly not easy, but I've kind of learned and figured it out a little bit, and obviously I've had some success, so it's been really cool just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah. I'm assuming a little bit less pressure on the lands you hunt out in the Midwest as far as human pressure than Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I won't lie. There's definitely pressure, but it's not like PA. So I guess it's cool in that aspect of like having a little bit more space, I guess you could say, but I'm definitely like appreciative of it because I do know what Pennsylvania and I mean like Michigan, just the high pressure states. I know what they're like. So it's a nice change of pace.
Yeah, and obviously you're in some good whitetail areas out there. So now, did you do some turkey hunting this spring? How did that go?
Did, yeah, I shot 3 so far and I actually have a PA tag. I'm going to Pennsylvania next week, so I'll be hunting with my dad. But yeah, I actually had a really good spring. I killed one in Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. So really well.
Well, congratulations. That's a great run there. And you still
Thank
have some tremendous turkey hunting out there. I mean, the bird numbers aren't what they used to be in the Midwest and Kansas and Nebraska and
you.
things like that, but they're still better than a lot of places in the country. So you do have some bird havens there, shall we say.
Yeah, I have noticed that. I've actually talked to some people. I met a wildlife biologist. I think she's from Alabama, and so her and I were kind of talking at the NWTF show a little bit about numbers and kind of like what her opinion is on it. And it's interesting just hearing different opinions. And they're trying to decrease tag numbers, and they think trapping has a lot to do with it, or maybe the season start date where turkeys aren't getting a chance to breed before they're being shot. So I don't really know what the answer is, but it is interesting. And I've personally noticed, there is a little bit of a decline depending on where I go versus, past seasons. So, um, biologist, but it is interesting to kind of pay attention to. So,
Well, good luck when you get back to Pennsylvania here. Hope you have a wonderful time
thank
hunting.
you.
And, we touched very early on about the saddle hunting. What's your current saddle setup that you use as far as deer hunting?
So I use primarily tethered stuff. So I've got the tethered, the Phantom, and surprisingly, I actually like the XL. I don't know, it just gives me a little bit more room, and then especially late season, if I have a lot of layers on, I think it's a little bit more comfortable to sit in. So I like the XL, and I got a suspender kit so they don't fall off of me. So I use that, and I've got the Predator platform and the One Sticks, and truly, I mean, you can always mess around and figure out different ways to get lighter and stuff, but I really do like the setup. I don't really have any complaints with it, and it's been nice to me for the last couple years. So that's just kind of what I've been sticking to.
Yeah, and that stick is we're talking about weight throughout this conversation. I think those are literally 1 pound with the attachment, and
Yes.
but it made
Yes.
me think. The other thing is you're taking your camera gear in, you're taking your saddle in. You're some of the places you
Mhm.
hunt are pretty far from the road. I know some of the times you'll ride an e-bike and things like that. So I wanted to ask you about the pack that you're using now, and I honestly don't know what pack you're using, but I'm assuming you need to have a pretty well organized setup to tote everything in. So can you talk a little bit about how the pack you use and maybe how crucial it is to have a great organization system if you're going to do some self filming?
Yes. I mean, it's definitely crucial. And when you do it long enough, you kind of get into a routine of like everything has its place, and you kind of just the order to put things in the pack because you're taking them out in a certain order, just to cut down on noise and movement, obviously. So I have gosh, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the pack that Tether just came out with. And I kind of messed around with packs prior to that, and a lot of like my personal issue is being a woman. My frame is a lot smaller than most guys, so a lot of the packs were just too big and bulky. I had a Kafaru pack that I actually liked pretty good. But yeah, currently I just have a tethered pack, and I love it just based on the size of it. But it's one of those. It's like it's perfect because it's not too big for my frame, but it also has enough space that it can hold everything. And I kind of just organize it in a way where, my I usually carry my camera like on the outside, but like the camera arm goes in, and then I've got the bracket and the attachment, obviously. And yeah, I kind of just organize it in a way that makes sense to take it out. And if you can just find your rhythm and like whatever works best for you, then you kind of just fall into it, and it's like second nature to just climb up, get ready, and you're good.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about the pack because it's sometimes, I mean, packs are important, but sometimes it can be a little bit overlooked. And for me, for
Mhm.
example, I do a lot of late season hunting here in Pennsylvania with the bow or with the crossbow,
Sure.
and I have a Mystery Ranch Treehouse pack. I like it because it's deep. Those packs that sort of stand up with the flip top lid. I can get the extra
Yep.
layers in there. I can take whatever I need for a sit, but then I can put
Yeah.
everything in the top, and it's easy access. And so, it's just important to have something that can carry what you need, that you can be comfortable
Mhm.
with, but also that you can get at when you need it. That's huge.
Yeah, and I also what I like about it is it's got like the Molly system.
Yeah,
It's very like military looking. So it's nice because you can customize it a little bit, add straps if you need to, where you need them. Because obviously everybody, they carry different things, but it's I like it just because I can carry a lot of stuff on the pack, and it frees up my hands, and it just I don't know, I like it a lot.
yeah, and I think the other thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap up here is, I wanted to hear some examples of what's the best hunt you've ever filmed. Now, it might be swoops or it might be something else. Is there something that just came together perfectly for you, as far as self filming? What pops in your mind there?
Oh man, that's so tough because like there's so many that are awesome, but then there's also so many that I'm like, man, I wish this was different. Like swoops, like just the coolest hunt, just because of the deer and the history that I had with him. Um, but my footage when he was coming in, I had 3 minutes left of legal light, so it was very dark. And the camera, depending on what you have, it always gets darker on the camera than what it is like where you're actually
Yeah.
looking. So what I could see, it was still daylight, and obviously the camera was pretty dark. So I wish that was a little bit different, obviously, but that's just kind of part of it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that was probably my coolest hunt. Just overall, everything just worked out really well.
Yeah, and thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask you along those lines, did you ever have an experience or a hunt where you thought everything that could go wrong went wrong? And when you put it all
Oh
together
my
in the
gosh.
end, it ended up perfectly or near perfect?
Um, do you mean like as far as like just making a video out of it?
I think we can approach it either way. Where it ended up, well, yeah, making a video, whether you ended up with taking an animal or not, did it? You just thought,
Yeah.
man, no matter what I'm doing here, it's not working out.
Yeah, I would say I have a lot of those. There's definitely I don't know, self filming just in general is one of those things where you just have to kind of roll with the punches because it usually doesn't work out how you want it to. And that, I think that makes the ones that do work out a lot sweeter because you're like, oh yes, finally. Yeah, I mean, definitely I've had a lot of videos where I think the biggest thing is I always feel like I don't have enough. I'm like, "Ah, I wish I filmed a little more of this," or there's times where like I'll have a turkey, for example, come in and they're already looking at me, so I can't turn the camera on, and it's like I pretty much have to put at the bottom the turkey, but I couldn't film it, whatever. So like little things like that, I wish, there's times I wish that I could do something about it, but you just can't.
But as you said, it's about being flexible and adapting and being able to work with your creativity and what you had. So the only other thing I wanted to ask you is you do so much filming.
Yeah.
What's the next animal on your, I don't want to call it a bucket list, but what's that animal that you really want to go for and try to film? Do you have something that you'd really like to target?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of things. I mean, like my dream hunt, I guess, would be like a caribou with a bow. I think that'd be really, really cool. Probably won't self film that one because I think that might be a little bit difficult. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would definitely be the top of my list. And honestly, like recently, I started doing like a cooking series, wild game cooking. So I really would like to just try anything at this point. Like I've never waterfowl hunted, so I would really like to do that this year. Um, you know, I mean, anything. Elk, I've never shot an elk. That'd be really cool. So I'm pretty open as far as like just trying new things, trying different hunts, and it'd be cool to do all that and then tie that in with my cooking series and show different ways to cook different types of animals. So that's kind of my like goal is to just start experimenting and going on cool hunts.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cooking series. I know you do the videos, and I've seen them on the YouTube channel, and so sort of open a Pandora's box. I love to cook too, so I'll ask you one more question, even though I said we were just about done here. And what's your favorite thing? Like, what inspired you? What was that first dish you wanted to make when you started that? Was there's something that you love to make with venison or something else that is like your go-to?
Yeah, so it's called pesto pasta, and you can use any kind of ground meat. So I tend to use like venison or elk. But I mean literally any kind of you can even use beef if you wanted to, but it's a very simple dish, similar to like a spaghetti or a lasagna, but there's a lot of cheese in it, and you add walnuts and red pesto, and I don't know what it is, but it is just like so good. It's one of those like I could make it every week and not get sick of it. So that's one of those I'm like, okay, this would be cool to add. And then, obviously I'm already making meals anyway. So I was like, why not film it and share recipes with everybody else?
Well, that's amazing. That sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to go find that video and check that out. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to thank you so much for taking time to join us on the Bow Hunting Podcast today. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge. Like I said, I just never had an idea how to start filming. I mess around, but I think that you're able to share so many tips with people. And for everybody who's listening here today, don't be afraid. Don't be a me. Go try it out. Know that things may not be absolutely 100% perfect the first time, but as you do more, you're going to get better. And Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for downloading the Peterson's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Peterson's Bowhunting magazine on your local newsstand, or connect with us online at bowhuntingmag.com.